Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the 5th video in my Principles of Management series, and this video is going to be discussing planning and decision making. So let's get right into this video. What we're going to talk about is about summarizing the basic steps in the planning process. We're going to discuss how strategic planning should be integrated with tactical and operational planning. We're going to talk about strategic management processes and the importance of SWOT analysis in strategy formulation, as well as be able to discuss how companies analyze things to compete and have a competitive advantage within their business strategy. So we're also going to talk about strategy implementation and what those keys are for that, and explain how to be effective in making better decisions as a manager. And I'll share with you some examples of some barriers that affect rational decision making, and then I'll sum everything up. So let's get started in it. Let's talk about one of the most important things that managers need to do. It's planning. And so planning really is a conscious and systematic process of making decisions about goals and activities for any individual, group, or team in order to pursue them in the future. So you can do planning as a manager or as an individual. You could do it with your team to accomplish team goals, and of course, if you're the top manager, you can help create organizational planning. So there are 6 different steps in the planning process. 1 is do a situation analysis. 2, consider alternative goals and plans. 3, goal and plan evaluation. 4, goal plan selection. 5, actually implementing it. And then 6, monitoring and control it. So each of these 6 different steps are absolutely important, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So some of the 3 common plans that are used by organizations include a single-use plan, a standing plan, or a contingency plan. And a single-use plan really is about focusing on achieving non-repeating goals. An example of this is making a recall of 6.5 million macaroni and cheese boxes after consumers found metal in some of the boxes in the case of Kraft. A standing plan is designed to accomplish an enduring set of goals. For instance, Beats by Dr. Dre dominates the premium headphone market through consistently strong marketing campaigns. And then a contingency plan are specific actions when initial plans fail, or events externally happen that mean you have to create sudden change. And an example of this would be in California, due to several years of below average rainfall, this developed a drought, so there had to be contingency plans put into place. So everything is a result of effective planning or non-effective planning. So really going through each of the steps of effective planning really matters. In step 1, situational analysis, this is the process that planners use within time, resources, constraints to gather, interpret, and then summarize all information relevant for planning, period. All right. Step 6 is about generating alternatives and plans. And creativity is your best tool in the planning process where you're generating alternatives. Think broadly. Ideally, really think about what your organizational goals are and what is it that you're going to do to achieve the targets that you want to reach. And I'm always reminded about this SMART model. That's being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. With step 3, it's about evaluating goals and plans. So managers need to really look at advantages and disadvantages and potential effects of what each alternative goal and plan is. They must prioritize these goals and then eliminate some of the goals. And then managers must really take into careful considerations the implications of alternative plans and make sure that priorities are carefully identified. In step 4, that's about selecting the goals and plans. Managers must make the most appropriate and feasible alternatives work. And in the evaluation process, in this selection process, priorities and trade-offs have to be considered with these goals. And so you have to create what we call a scenario. That's a narrative that describes a particular set of ideal future conditions or non-ideal, and be able to have a plan to work around those scenarios. Step 5 is about implementing the goals and plans. Managers and employees must understand the plan and have resources to implement it, and then be motivated to do so. So successful implementation plans require a plan to be linked to other systems in the organization, particularly with budget and reward systems in place. And then finally, step 6 is about monitoring and controlling performance. Managers must continually monitor the actual performance of their work units against the unit's goals and plans. And then managers also need to develop control systems to measure performance and allow them to take corrective action when the plans are implemented improperly and when the situation changes. All right. So, let's talk about strategic planning sets, how they set a long-term direction. So, strategy, everything is about strategy. It's not what happens, it's what you do. And so having a proper strategy or pattern of actions and making sure you have the right allocations of resources designed to achieve whatever your organization's goals are. Strategic planning is about a set of procedures for making decisions about the organization's long-term goals and strategies. And finally, strategic goals are major targets that end results relating to an organization's long-term survival, value, and growth. Managers need to know what they need to know, and so they have to have the right information in order to make the plans, strategic plans, to accomplish strategic goals. Tactical and operational planning and support involve strategy. So tactical planning is a set of procedures for translating broad strategic goals and plans into specific goals and plans that are relevant to a distinct portion of the organization, such as functional area like marketing, for instance. Operational planning is the process of identifying the specific procedures and processes required at lower levels of the organization. So, let's talk about who does what. So for strategic planning, generally speaking, top-level managers, vice president, CEO, president, create an overall strategic plan. Generally speaking, they're looking 3 to 7 years. With tactical planning, these are what the middle managers do, and it relates to the strategic plans given to them by the top managers. And there's a little more details that are involved. And generally speaking, tactical planning extends about 1 to 2 years. Operational planning is what happens, and frontline managers are the ones who develop it, and it's a very detailed plan. So strategic planning, low details, high level of the organization. Tactical, medium details made by middle managers, and then operational managers. Generally speaking, this is a plan for less than a year, but it is a very detailed plan. It's where the rubber meets the road. So with strategic management, this is a process that involves managers from all parts of the organization and the formulation and its implementation of strategic goals and strategies. So you're establishing a mission, vision, and goals. You're analyzing the external opportunities and threats. You're analyzing internal strengths and weaknesses. You're doing a SWOT analysis and strategy formulation. There's strategy implementation, and then strategic control. And the planning and decision-making process is taking place throughout the whole processes here. So, first you have to establish a mission, vision, and goals. All excellent organizations have a very clear mission statement, and an organization's basic purpose and scope of operations are often spelled out. So I double dog dare you, if you don't know your organization's mission statement, figure that out, because that really is key to really understanding what the organization is all about. Having a strategic vision is about long-term direction and strategic intent of the organization, and it helps provide a perspective where the organization is headed and what it can ideally become. There are always external opportunities and threats, and you have to consider stakeholders, and stakeholders are groups of individuals who affect and are affected by the achievement of an organization's mission, goals, and strategies. So it includes buyers, suppliers, competitors, government, regulatory agencies, unions, employees, financial community, or the owners, shareholders, trade associations. And so an environmental analysis provides a map of these stakeholders and helps understand ways that they can influence the organization. As far as the third, analyzing internal strengths and weaknesses, you have to consider resources. These are the inputs to a system that can enhance performance. They're tangible and intangible assets. Benchmarking, process of assessing how well one's company's basic functions and skills compare to those of another company or set of companies. The goal of benchmarking is to thoroughly understand the best practices of other firms and to undertake actions to achieve better performance at lower costs. So, conduct an external analysis. They should also assess the strengths and weaknesses of major functional areas of their organization. Internal resources, including financial analysis, understanding the strengths and weaknesses through financial statements, using balance sheets, income statements, and comparing trends in historical industry figures. Human resources assessment, that's examining strengths and weaknesses of all levels of managers and employees, and focusing on key human resource activities, including recruitment, selection, placement, training, labor, compensation, promotion, appraisal, work-life balance, and other planning things. I talk about these in other videos. Marketing auditing, strengths and weaknesses of marketing activities, recognizing key market segments, competitors' positions, market share, operational analysis, strengths and weaknesses on how the organization is manufacturing, producing, and then delivering. And then other things like strengths and weaknesses of other things the organization is doing, research and development, for instance, product and processes, information systems, engineering and purchasing. So a lot of different things to analyze for strengths and weaknesses. So a SWOT analysis, essentially what good managers know how to do. You can do a personal SWOT analysis on yourself, as an employee. What do you do well? What are your areas of opportunity? What are the threats to you? Same thing that managers need to do. Essentially, organizations are living, breathing organisms just like people are. You got to have a corporate strategy, and so you have to look at where you are in your organization and where you want to be. How are you going to do things to get the results that you want? Are you going to focus on particular business units within your organization. Where are you going to put your resources, essentially? So there's something called the BCG Matrix. And this really is important as a manager to understand where you're going to allocate your resources, where you currently are. And so in your organization there are things called question marks. And these are high growth, weak competitive position business requires a substantial investment to improve their position, or else they should be divested. So when you're looking at things that your organization is doing, how well are each of the different units in your business doing? Is this something that you're going to put too much money into and you're not going to get the return on investment? So you have to consider whether or not withdrawing from question marks. Stars are your business's high growth and strong competitive position business units. Require heavy investment, but their strong position lets them generate the needed revenues. So stars are profitable and help keep your business reputable. Cash cows are low growth businesses with a strong competitive positions, and they generate revenues in excess of their investments needed, and they help fund other business units within your organization. And then there are dogs, and these are low growth, weak competitive position businesses, and they should be divested after remaining revenues are realized. So you're constantly analyzing your business using a BCG matrix to make the best strategies possible. So business strategies require major actions where your organization can build strength and maintain a competitive position in the marketplace. A low-cost strategy is what an organization does to build a competitive advantage by being efficient and offering a standard with a no-frills product. And then there's differentiation, and this is a term that we use to understand how to use a strategy to build a competitive advantage, and by being unique in the business in one market segment or another. Implementation is about doing the activities needed, and you have to define strategic tasks, assess organizational capabilities, develop an implementation agenda, and then create an implementation plan. And you have to have the right controls in place, and these are terms that managers use to evaluate progress with strategy, and then make sure that when there are discrepancies from accomplishing things, that the right corrective actions are put in place to have systems that help make sure you're being as efficient and effective as possible. So with decision making, there's formal decision making, and it really has 6 essential steps. 1, identifying and diagnosing the problem. 2, generating alternative solutions. 3, evaluating alternatives. 4, making the choice. 5, implementing the decision. And 6, evaluating the decision. So when you're making the choice, you need to maximize what will the best possible outcome be. And then you can do something called satisficing, which is choosing an option that is acceptable, although not necessarily the best perfect, so satisfying. And so it's not the best or perfect decision. And then optimizing is your third choice, and that's achieving the best possible balance among several goals. When you're implementing the decision, you have to determine how things will look when the decision is fully operational. Chronological order is about looking at the flow diagram and necessary steps to achieve a fully operational decision. You're looking at and listing resources and activities that are required for implementing each step. You have to estimate the amount of time that's needed for each step. And then make sure you're assigning responsibility to the people that are involved for each step to specific individuals. Very often, there are something called psychological biases, And when there is an illusion of control, there is a belief that can influence events when they have really no control over what will happen. So it's an illusion. So sometimes we think we can control things that we have no control over. Framing effects are about decision biases that influence the way in which a problem or decision alternative is phrased and presented. And then there's discounting the future. And this is a bias weighting short-term costs and benefits more heavily than longer-term costs and benefits. There are some advantages and disadvantages for using groups in decision making. The advantages, of course, more information improves decisions. Different perspectives enhance problem solving. Group discussions spur on thinking. And understanding may be greater or deeper, and then you build greater commitment. Some of the disadvantages of group decision making is that one person may dominate this discussion and undermine the process. It may lead to satisficing. It may lead to groupthink, and original goals may be displaced and less important. So let's talk about these. Groupthink. That's a phenomenon that occurs when decision making, when a group member avoids disagreement and then they just strive for consensus. So someone says something and then everybody gets on board. And it may not be the best decision. That's one of the problems with groupthink. With group displacement, this is when decision-making group loses sight of the original goal and a new or less important goal emerges. So it's important when you're making a decision to stick to the process of that goal that lead to making that goal happen. We talked about a SWOT analysis. This is involving strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. As managers, we constantly need to be doing SWOT analysis for our team and for our organization, but it's also wise to do a SWOT analysis for yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? So that, in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen, is my thoughts on the processes of planning and decision making. I've shared some terms with you, and I've talked about some processes and why they're important. So I hope that you have found something of value in this 22-minute video, and I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it. I'm Dr. Paul Gerhardt.